Senegal, where I went to recently for the first time, and I was taken aback. Is this Africa for real? It was so beautiful. Clean beaches, beautiful women, beautiful water, beautiful buildings, beauty in Africa. I was taken aback. Why? Because I was always shown an Africa that was dirty, an Africa of poverty, an Africa of lack, an Africa of whatever you name it, as long as it is negative. I don't want to follow my slide. I want it to be very, very conversational. When Africa gets reported in the global media, we get reported, as he was saying, and thank you for the report and thank you for the work you're doing. I really appreciate that. When we get reported in the global media, we get reported as an outlier. Let me explain. I don't want to speak too fast because it's being translated. We get reported as an outlier. So, the lady that is doing something really, really well gets shown on CNN African Voices as one out of 1.1 billion people doing something extraordinary. That's not the true story. We don't have to be reported as an outlier. You have to put Africa in the mainstream of the media. And Africans, of course, have to help themselves. We have to create our own media. Because no matter how beautiful the German-African partnership would end, the best way to tell the African story would, as far as I'm concerned, will always be that Africa owns its own global media. Look at what Al Jazeera is doing to the Middle East. Just look at it. They are taking their story by their own guts and they are reporting it. In fact, Al Jazeera is now transiting into taking the African story and reporting it well with Africans, like he said. Today, China is more perceived. China is better perceived than the West in Africa. And I will explain to you. The reason is because that's why I like one of the fundamental parts of this African partnership that talks about a direct relationship. The reason is because, and by the way, I'm not a fan of China. So you have to understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying I hate China, but I'm not a fan of China. But China is being perceived in a good light in Africa today because China comes to you and says, let's do business. Man to man, woman to woman, equality. And then some guy comes and then says, yeah, you guys take $7, take care of yourself. Nobody needs that anymore. If you're not going to do business, keep your money where you keep it. I mean, last year there were 46 million poor Americans. 46 million that depended on the government to feed. 46 million. Nobody reports that in Africa. Africa, what do we report? We report the beauty of these places. Now, if I sound angry, I'm sorry. But, I mean, I grew up watching my continent depicted as though we don't even exist. Black, dark continent. But I come from there and I know that, for instance, first of all, there are 54 countries. It's not one country. Imagine, Rick Ross. How many of us know Rick Ross? Yeah, he's a rapper. He's an American. He's a big-time American hip-hop artist. And he's even black. And he says it's good to be back in the country of Africa. Oh, of course, that's an example of the failure of American education. Because an African would not call the United States of America a continent. Yeah? You call Africa a country, but of course Africa is a continent. The diversity of this continent. The biggest inflow of money to Africa last year was not from America, it was not from the World Bank, it was from Africans abroad. The biggest inflow of money to the continent, $60.4 billion. No money has ever flown into Africa in a single year like that ever before. I'm waiting for the numbers for this year. And Africa is the toughest place to send money because it's more expensive to send money to Africa than to any part of the continent. Go and check Google. Google will tell you the truth. Of course, it's not only Africa that is being generalized. In Africa, we also look at the Western media as one. We think you guys just want to put us in one box. That's why it would be good for Germany, for instance, to take itself out of that box. Let me tell you one advantage Germany has. When Africans think of Germany, they think of Bayern Munich, they think of Borussia Dortmund, and then they think of a name that has something to do with the war, the World War. So Germany actually has a clean slate to start afresh. And how do you start afresh? By following Dr. Martin's example, by relating with Africa in a business way. You can actually make money from reporting Africa. And I'll explain. There are big companies in Africa today Globalcom is investing huge amounts of money across the continent, and it's an African-Nigerian business. And there is money. Ashish Thakar is just about 31 years old. He's a billionaire, recognized by Forbes, because apparently Forbes has to say you're a billionaire before you're a billionaire. So he is a billionaire. The world is so crazy. He's a billionaire, he has money. There is MTN that was one of the major sponsors of the FIFA World Cup in 2010. If you go to Africa and tell them that this is what you're trying to do in Germany in terms of shaping perception of how Africa is perceived in Germany, and these are the opportunities that are there for you. They are the ones that sponsor these outlier programs on BBC, on CNN. I'm sure they would be in a very good position to sponsor your program. How can you tell me 1.1 billion people is... That's a big business, man. Yeah? You go to a place of 1.1 billion people. However you look at it, there's money to be made. Guess what? 40% of the continent is urbanized. That means 40% of them are able to buy whatever you have to sell. Yeah? You don't come and see people looking for debt on the road. I was actually surprised that I found myself in train and let me not even go to those stories. There are beggars everywhere. And there are rich people everywhere. We have to start understanding these things. And it should go beyond the blah, blah, blah of conferences. We actually have to intentionally integrate ourselves. Take Germans to Africa to see Africa for themselves. Bring some Africans to Germany. When I say Germany, I don't mean Berlin. To Germany, other parts of this country. I did not know there were so many green things in Germany until I went through the train. First of all to Dortmund and then to this place. Beautiful land across the place. Yeah, beautiful just beyond the high buildings and beautiful buildings in Berlin. There is a side of Germany that looks like Africa.